Hey, everybody. We're back with another episode of putting some fun back into your dysfunctional lives. I'm Amy, and I'm a psychotherapist with over 35 years of experience. 30 of those I've been battling MS for that long. And I'm here with my friend Buck, who I've known since seventh grade.
Hi,
Introduce yourself.
I am Buck. I am someone who has been under psychiatric care since fourth grade with OCD, and throughout my life under therapist care or psychiatric care, medications, different medications. Recently diagnosed as bipolar. And have extreme anxiety, so I started attending a anxiety group here in Montreal, and before we start our topic, I'm going to ask Amy what her most dysfunctional day was this week. What happened?
Oh, well, I always have some kind of song playing in the back of my head, even if it's just like humming or whatever. But every once in a while, I get an earworm that's so bad it just doesn't leave for hours, and I'll try really hard to get rid of it, and then it just comes right back. I just noticed, there's that song again, and this time it's Janice Jackson's "Let's Wait a While." Like it's a really old song. I have no clue where that came from. I think there must be a line in there that reminded me of something, but it's horrible. It's a horrible earworm. And I heard on Stephen Colbert was talking about how you're supposed to stop earworms by singing just a tiny little bit of something that doesn't have a lot. So he always says, "By Menon," then it stops. That that you get those is because it becomes a loop in your head, and you know what
Yeah.
that's like to have a loop in that when you even when you say stop or confront it, it just keeps coming back. So, and every once in a while, I get one that's really bad and just stays forever.
Yeah.
So, one time it was Miley Cyrus's like whatever her big song was about. Oh, put your hands up, whatever. No, it was I want to party. Something. And I don't remember, but it just wouldn't leave my head. And it's the only way you can get rid of it is to like listen to it, but that doesn't always work. So
Yeah. Well,
that's my dysfunction is I get earworms that are horrible
I think
and don't leave.
your mind is like I like to think of your mind as like a card catalog. Remember the old card catalog from the
Yeah.
library? And
Yep.
every once in a while, one card will just pop up, from your
And
memory,
and not go away.
for no reason.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
see, you think of someone that you haven't seen in like 40 years or whatever like that. And you're
Yeah.
wondering what they're doing. And it's like, why am I thinking about them? Why did this card pop up in my head? So we have all these memories, and I think they get shoved back there, and every once
Yeah.
in a while they just pop up. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
My dysfunction of the week is that my cat will not let me sleep in the morning. And, well, I could just
Just
go back
cats.
to bed, but she walks
Yeah.
all over us and meows, but she walks all over us. I mean, it's just this continuous walking, up and down
Yeah.
our bodies. And then,
So there's no way you're
yeah,
going to sleep.
and there's no way to sleep. And then she wants to be fed. And then I would get up and feed her, because Mario would be, he was staying home, working from home, or he had some, and I wanted him to sleep longer, so I would get up and feed the cat. But I made the mistake of opening my phone, so then I start
Oh.
playing on my phone. Then I can't go back to
Yeah. Yeah.
sleep. And
Yep.
then it's 7 o'clock, and I watch the
Uh,
Today Show. And then, then it's like I can't go back to sleep. I lay in bed
yeah.
and I can't go back to sleep, so I reach for my phone. And the phone is just so addictive, and I'm not looking at anything.
It
I mean,
is.
I'm checking messages, but I'm long past that scrolling. So I
Yeah.
I'm really trying to stop doing that. I have to just,
It's hard to give it up, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's just boredom, I guess. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
so today I thought we'd talk about. Uh, we talked about last week. Talked about group therapy a little bit. I just entered a group here in Montreal for anxiety, and
Hmm.
I wondered what your experience with leading a group, like the dynamics of the group. The people in the
Yeah.
group, how you lead a group, how you you know
We could go.
yeah,
Yeah.
how you lead a group and organize it and kind of, you know, have
And
to
kind
cut
of
people
moderate
off
it.
sometimes, have to make sure everybody gets a chance to share. So I want to know what your
Yeah.
experience was with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're talking about this is you're a therapist led group as opposed to like AA or something like that that's more, you know, participant run,
Right.
you know. There's no like professional kind of saying here's what you have to do. It's just everybody's volunteering. So, but and I don't do a ton of groups because they're really hard to get people to show up for
Right.
sometimes. But I've done I did a women's group in when I was in Danville, Illinois. I worked at this place called Center for Children's Services, which was community mental health for 18 and under, but we were able to see the parents too if it is in the condition of you have kids that are also participating in therapy or not. Yeah, they have to be participating in therapy
Right.
for the moms to come. So I did a mother's group, and I wanted it to be not necessarily a mother's group because I didn't want to necessarily just always talk about like parenting because that's a whole different ballgame. But so we were it was called mothers with single women with children. So they had to have kids, but we just needed to be single and
Right.
looking for things, and that was a decent group. That was open ended, like free form group. And then I did a grief group for kids, which was not open ended. It was specific things to do on different dates,
Right.
and that was like so. Because an open ended group will start and finish. It might have different people come and go, that kind of stuff. But a therapy led group like that is usually the
Right.
same contestants,
Okay.
the same people. So
Right.
um, yeah, so I did the grief group with the kids, which was structured, so it was easier in a way, and the structured was harder. And then I did another mothers group for for women whose kids were in foster care, and I did a lot of group trainings and a lot of which is also, even though it's not really group therapy, it sort of has the same feel of like getting people to participate and using the skills that I'm training on, whatever.
Right.
So that's just a variety of the ways you can have a group.
Right.
So and there's you were well. I know your experience. How was your experience? Tell me that
Well,
first.
so
So I,
I have been waiting to get into a group. I actually wanted to get into a bipolar group, which I saw a sign for, that they have meetings already, and I have to wait to get into that. But I got into the anxiety group, and I didn't know what to expect, and I went, and there people are waiting, and once we got in the room, it was pretty obvious to see that all of them were suffering from some sort of, anxiety to severe anxiety. You could just see it in their eyes and stuff like that. And the moderators, the therapists, were interns, which
Mhm.
wasn't really great because this is only like their
Not
second group or third group they've ever done, and they both spoke. There's French speaking, so their pronunciation in English was not good. Their English was okay, but they were not. It was hard to understand
they're not.
sometimes, especially the woman. Um, and there's always that guy in the group, you know, that guy or girl
Yeah, first.
who
Yeah,
wants to speak all the time and always has a really good experience. I mean, has an experience to share, and then it evolves into some other thing where he starts talking about something else that doesn't have anything to do with anxiety. And
was
you know, I was
yeah.
I was you know it- this was me while he was doing that because he just wouldn't shut up, and I was trying to signal the therapist to cut him off. Um,
You,
and then
you step in.
the worst thing he did was give people advice. So, so
Yeah,
somebody would share, I shared, and he started giving me advice. And my eyes got like that again because I was like, you are not a therapist.
you're not.
You are not a
Yeah,
therapist. This is your second or third time around. You are definitely not a
right.
therapist. So finally, the male therapist said, that's, yeah, that's a good share. We need to move on, but we have to move on because of
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And finally, but he kept just chiming in. I'm sorry to speak again, but I'm just like, are you really? Are you?
No, you're not. Sorry.
Are you?
I'm sorry you don't like that I speak all the time,
Yeah,
but I'm going to
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. So that was But what's interesting to me too was and the therapist said we could talk about it, just no names, but he said feel free to talk
Hmm.
about it. There were women there that were had children, and they talked. It
Right.
was interesting. One woman said, I felt like I was fine till I had a child. Then I was so worried about the child. Was I doing this right? Like, that people were judging me on it. Was I being a good mother? And, was I doing everything to protect and care for my baby and blah, blah, blah. Then this other woman said, I was so anxious till I had a baby. Then when I had a baby, I had something to focus on, you know?
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
like, now that
Yeah.
now that the baby is in school, she said, now I'm anxious
It's
again.
back.
Like it came back
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
had something to focus on, but now I don't. So she said,
Yeah.
now I'm anxious again. I thought that was really, really interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. It definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was one woman who spoke very quietly and, shared that she's always anxious, and you could see that she's always anxious and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
we went through different charts and stuff. They gave us a book, like a workbook, and
Hmm.
they gave you a. Let's see if I can see this. So this is the Yerkes Dotson law. So it's degrees of anxiety and how you know there can be good anxiety and bad anxiety. I don't know if that's true, but
Hmm.
like sometimes high anxiety is optimal arousal and optimal performance. But when he asked
Right.
where everybody was on this sort of chart, everyone was like, you know, the impaired,
Right.
right?
Right.
Impaired performance because of
Yeah.
strong anxiety. And he was like,
Right.
oh, everybody's here. And we were all like, yeah, that's why we're in this group. You know,
You all have what's called GAD, which is generalized anxiety disorder.
right.
And that just means, I mean, when you have a specific phobia, that's different than anxiety. Or if you have a specific thing that that makes you nervous, like high places or something like that. But, uh, and I had another point, but I forgot what it was. But that's all right. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So,
It-
and then they gave us this, sort of questionnaire to see how extreme your
yeah.
anxiety was. I just kept circling the top, you know. Not always, but I did, and I did a lot.
Well,
Yeah, and um, you know, they just kept asking, "What makes you anxious? What makes you anxious? What makes you anxious?" And it was like, So finally, when we finished that and turned it in, uh, he was like, so, they started doing stuff on the chalkboard. This can make you anxious. This can make you anxious. And
mhm.
finally, I just, they were like, why, Buck, what makes you anxious? And I just said, I wake up with it. I don't know why.
Right.
It's just always
Right.
there. And his eyes got kind of big, and the quiet girl goes, yes. And then all of a sudden, all these other people went, yes. And I said, I don't know
It's
why
just,
it's there. And the girl said, I don't know why it's there. And this other girl goes, I don't know why
right.
it's there. And, we were like, I hope the group will help us find that if it is there. But, you know, he was like, well, you know, do you sleep well? And I said, yeah, after 2 hours of just tossing and turning in the bed because I'm so anxious, and I take all this
Mhm.
medication and then I wake up with it. And he said, but do you
Right.
sleep? And I said, yeah, I try to sleep as long as I can. And I said, and I try to take naps during the day. And he said, why?
Yeah.
I mean, he said, well, that's good. I mean, and I said, because I don't want to be conscious. And all these people went, yes.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want to be conscious. I don't want to be in my
Yeah.
mind. And I said, and I want it to stop. So I said, I'm
Right.
looking for in this group a way to make it stop. So you know, and
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yep.
yeah, and he asked, you know, do people think of suicide and stuff like that, because it is bad, you know, it's bad in your head. And I said, I just don't want to be conscious. I would rather not be
Yeah.
conscious.
Yeah. That's, and that's typical. It's not people who are, a lot of times people who are suicidal don't want to die. They just don't want to feel yucky anymore.
Yeah,
You know, they just have to try to function with all this angst and, you know, anxiety and worries and all those things. So, and I was going to also say, sometimes anxiety is what we call free floating. It means it just is like out there. It doesn't have anything to attach to.
right.
You know, it's not like, oh, I'm anxious because I know I have to go do this tomorrow or whatever. You know, it's just there, and you can't. It just feels like impending doom, and you have no clue why. You know,
Yeah,
and that's more chemical. That's more clinical. You know, that's the stuff that should respond to medications, but it's hard to get every medication to you know, everybody's brain is different, and
right.
you don't know what kind of anxiety, what's causing it, you know, and where's it. It doesn't matter so much where it's coming from or what causes it, as it is to just find a solution to alleviate it.
Yeah,
That's like more.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I told my psychiatrist, I said, you know, this anxiety medication he gave me, I said, it's not really working. He's like,
Right.
well, are you taking it like 3 times a day? Now it's 2 times. I said, well, I forget in the afternoon. He goes, well, you have to take it. And I said, it doesn't do anything. So when it doesn't do anything, I said, you know,
Just forget about
when I took clonazepam,
it.
I could feel it work.
Yeah.
I could feel it
Yeah.
work in
Yeah.
like 10 minutes. It was working. And I
Right.
felt a lot
It's
better.
a shorter.
He's like, but that's a benzo.
Yeah.
You can get addicted. It's really hard to get off of it. And I said, I'm off of it. You know, I was on it for a year and a half, 2 years. And I said, and then I went off of it and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a problem.
Yeah.
I said, I
Dead. Probably.
really, you know, and I said, what about lithium? What about, and he goes, well, you don't want to,
You want the head.
yeah.
Yeah.
He said, well, you don't want to
Oh,
be, what?
yeah. Have you ever heard? Have you heard of ketamine therapy?
Ketamine.
And I can't do it, but ketamine. Yeah. There's a lot of people have a reaction to ketamine. Say ketamine, or you say it, that when they take it, it alleviates the anxiety and it doesn't come back. And then but it's new enough
Yeah.
that I don't know if there's a lot of practitioners around who are doing it, but it's worth looking into to see if there's anybody around you who would do it. You know, I'm not sure regular doctors can because it's considered narcotics.
Well, I don't know.
But
When I was
I think it's
going
right.
to the, I can't remember what it's called, wellness center. Can't remember
Howard
where it
Brown,
was in Chicago.
the Howard Brown,
No, it wasn't
Howard
Howard
Brown.
Brown, because
Wasn't it Brown?
no,
Oh,
I gave
uh,
up on Howard Brown because
mm,
they kept
that's too bad.
this branch wasn't talking to this branch to this branch to this. So
Yeah,
I kept going. I literally had to go from this office to
and
this
do it all.
office to this office to this office. And then my doctor he retired and a new doctor came
Mm,
and everything had to be done all over again. And I was like, I'm done. So my
yeah,
social worker at the AIDS Foundation of Chicago recommended this other place, so I went. It wasn't that great, but they had ketamine drips. So
yeah,
sign up
yeah,
for ketamine drips. I never did, but you could sign up for
yeah,
ketamine drips. I mean, you had to have a psychiatrist say that you needed it.
yeah. Of course.
You could have ketamine
Yeah,
drips. So they were doing it in the office. So I guess it's legal
yeah,
if a psychiatrist signed
yeah.
off on it. Yeah, that would be
That's
something to
that,
ask about. But you know, I said,
yeah.
I'm sorry, they're doing construction below me right now.
That's right.
I, I'm going to ask my doctor
Because,
about it. But I also, you know, I said
yeah,
to him, what about lithium? What about, you know, and he goes, well, you don't want to be numb. I said, yes, I do.
you might.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do. And he goes, but then you're not able to do things. And I said, I'm 64. I don't want to do a
Yeah.
lot of things. I don't like people that much.
Yeah.
I said that in therapy. I don't like people that much. They disappoint me. I get angry. I don't want to get angry. I don't want to have confrontations with people. I just want to live my life and be left alone, And I said that to my
And feel
psychiatrist too.
and yeah, and not have to feel terrible all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
You know?
And I said to my psychiatrist, I said, if you lived in my head, you would want to be numb too, And I
Yeah.
mentioned to him about the in Canada you have the MAID thing, medically assisted induced death, and I said,
Right.
I know that there's a court case for well, it's not a court case anymore. She's actually going to do it for schizophrenia. So this woman, she's done. She's she's in her 40s or something now, and she's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done with the medication that makes me, completely a zombie, and I'm done with, coming out of it and not knowing
Yeah.
who I am and hearing voices and stuff like that. And she said it's never going to get better. There is no new medication. There is no new
Right.
treatment. She said, so I'm done. And I think it went through. I think that she's dead now because she just said, and so
Yeah.
they have to do it, I believe,
Yeah.
province by province by province. So I think Quebec is looking at that now to see if people who are severely mentally ill can just choose, death just to end it because
Yeah.
they got in trouble when they said, um, it's this was under Trudeau that it's only for physical ailments, terminal
Yeah.
physical disease,
Right.
and they were like,
Yeah.
so you're saying that mental health is not a health concern? It's not people who are
No.
ever going to get better mentally, who are just gone, who but are lucid enough to make their own decisions, when they're on medication, whatever like that. They don't have a right to just
Yeah.
end the torment, So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, because if they consider Alzheimer's a terminal illness, that has a lot of the same characteristics as a lot of the mental health
right,
issues.
right.
You know.
Well, I
Oh.
think they've talked about that you can sign up for a sort of it's a I don't want to say a death wish, but if I get to this point
Yeah.
where I can't,
End of life.
end of
Yeah.
life, where I can't control my bowels, or if I,
Right.
but you do it early when you're getting
Right.
Alzheimer's. So and you have to, it has to be, legally done with a lawyer and all that stuff. But it's like, if I get to this point, I want to end it. Right now we're dealing with Mario's mother, who, you know, she's had Alzheimer's for a while now. I mean, I don't know, 10 something
Yeah.
years. And, now she's in a facility where basically she's locked in her room. And,
Yeah.
it's very humane, though. I mean, she can come out and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
she's in her
Yeah.
room, they lock
Oh, of course.
because they don't want her wandering.
But they have to get one off, of course,
Yeah.
because that's what happened.
But she
Yeah.
doesn't know. She doesn't speak anymore. She can sing. She actually
Yeah.
sings, but she can't speak. Now she's not
Yeah.
eating.
Different part of the brain.
She just wants to go. And they just keep
Yeah.
hanging on and hanging on. She got a little sick. They thought she broke her hip, so but she didn't. But the order is to not resuscitate, no new operations,
Right. No.
But
Uh,
if
no.
she had that option, before she got really sick, she would have taken it because there's no way to live.
Right.
It's no way to live, and it's hard
No.
on the the kids.
Oh, absolutely. Hard on the family. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Because they don't necessarily understand. It's very confusing. Yeah.
yeah.
When I worked in a hospital right after undergrad, before I got my master's. I worked in a hospital as a psychiatric technician. They call this,
Oh,
which is really just a glorified babysitter. But I did get to do a lot of groups in there. But I was also thinking we had every once in a while we'd get somebody who came in with dementia and Alzheimer's, and the family would be like, "Why can't you fix this mental health issue?" or it's a mental problem. And it's like, no, that's a physical problem. And
Yeah.
it's no, he's not going to get better. If you have Alzheimer's, you're not going to get better.
Right.
You know, it's progressive. And my aunt has that. My mom's brother's wife
Oh,
has it as early onset. She's well, she's not that early. She's probably in her 70s, but it's really hard on my uncle. You know, he's it's just hard. It's hard on the kids. It's really hard on my uncle because, you know, she's an integral part of his life. It's hard on the kids, but they don't see her every day.
right.
They only have to deal with it when they visit or whatever. So, and but yeah, that's the one thing I think I would say. Like, kill me now if I got Alzheimer's. I
Yeah.
would not want to put that onto my family. It's way too difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you don't want to live like that.
but
Yeah.
no, and there's no group for Alzheimer's patients. I don't think.
No.
Maybe there are. Maybe there are groups.
No.
Yeah,
No.
but I there might be for the families support groups or something. But you know, yeah, that's the kind of thing that's just not going to respond to treatment. It's just the way it is. And, you
Yeah.
know, MS is that way. There's no, you know, it responds to treatment in that it slows it down. But my neurologist last time I was there said that I probably have moved into what's called primary progressive, but it's very slow moving when you get older. Like you still progress, but it's just less.
Okay.
You know, it's not so. But you know, the fact is that like eventually everything's just going to go to shit.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, you know. And what am I going to want to do then? And I don't this a support group for people with MS is tempting, but it's also hard for me because I think I would go into therapy mode and try to take over
Oh,
from the therapist, or you know.
yeah.
So I have to. It's a hard thing to do
Yeah.
to not be a therapist
Yeah.
when
It's
you're
like
trying to be a
me
patient.
being a director for stage and then trying to act on stage. And especially in a show that I'm directing, because I'm always watching what everybody else is doing from a director's point of
Yeah,
view. So it's hard for you to lose that therapist point of view, right? When you're in a group,
absolutely.
and it
Yep.
would be hard.
Yeah,
Yeah. And, you know,
it would. Yeah,
these participants in the group who try to, like I was talking about, this guy who just kind of keeps trying to guide the group and amaze the group with his
right.
stories and stuff like that. It you know, it steers it in the wrong direction. It goes off the road, you know. And you know, I wanted these therapists to really step in every time he did it, because he just kept doing it, you know, even though he said, I'm
Yeah,
sorry to
yeah.
speak again. But it's like, you know, you got to
From
cut him off. You need to. I almost stayed after and talked to them and said, you know, you really need to have a talk with him,
yeah,
because I don't know if
yeah.
that.
Well, hopefully they'll go and work with your supervisor and figure that out, because that really is like that's a new therapist lack of skill,
Yeah.
because you know, and especially women are taught to be polite and not interrupt or whatever, but you need to be able to like be assertive in that kind of situation and say it's wonderful that you're here and that you're participating, and you have to let somebody else talk too. You know, maybe you could save it for the next time or something like that, or we
Right.
could talk briefly afterwards or something. So that's a little communications formula. It's really a limit setting for kids. It's the ACT formula. So it stands for acknowledge the feeling or the intention, communicate the limit, target the alternative. So it would look something like what I just said. You would say, whatever his name is, you have a lot of information and a lot of things to share, and we really appreciate that. That's the acknowledge the feeling. Then communicate the limit is, and we have to move on to somebody else because this has to be a group for everybody. So that's the limit. And then target an alternative. Maybe you can save it for next week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's, you know, but that's that, like I said, that's a skill that you learn as you become more you know, as you gain more experience as a therapist.
Right.
It's not necessarily something that they teach you how to do.
Yeah.
You know, you can only learn a lot of times. There's things you only learn when you do them. You
Right.
know, or
Well,
when you experience.
I'll see how it goes next week. So that's our
Yeah,
program for today, our episode. Thank you for
yep,
tuning in, and we'll be here again next
absolutely.
week. I'm Buck.
Yep. And I'm Amy. And like and subscribe, and we'll be back.
Okay. Put the fun back
I
into your dysfunctional life.